Hello, and welcome to Top of Mind with Anne and Rachel. My name is Rachel Prophet, and we always like to do inclusive and accessible introductions. Again, my name is Rachel Prophet. My pronouns are she, her. I am a white woman with long red hair that's pulled back in a bun today. I'm wearing a pink t-shirt with a gray hoodie over it, and I'm in my office as usual with my epic sticker wall behind me. And I'll hand it over to Anne to introduce herself.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Long time no see. My name is Anne Krupke. My pronouns are she, her. I'm also a white woman. I've got dark brown hair that's in a bun today. I'm wearing a green sweatshirt, the green sweatshirt, if you know. And I've got my virtual background behind me. Beau, if you don't know, I might be particularly attached to this green sweatshirt, and I might accidentally wear it every time we do a Top of Mind. So
nice. I think it's been like 8 or 9 months since the last Top of Mind. So yes. That's like the
Thank
irony
you for pressuring us into doing another one, Beau. We appreciate you. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to our viewers?
Sure. Beau Schwieso. I am a white male. I've got blondish brunette hair. I'm wearing glasses, and I have a black shirt on. I've got a real background, and I'm in my office here in San Antonio, Texas.
You also have a mustache.
And a mustache. That's correct. I am still getting used to that, believe it or not. It's man, that was like November, not last year, but the year before, and it's still weird to see myself in the mirror wearing a mustache or like having a mustache. Wearing a mustache, is it, or you have it?
I think you're asking the wrong people, Beau. Like,
I don't know. Never had a mustache.
Yeah, how do you guys describe your mustaches? Like, yeah.
Generally, we like to pretend they don't exist.
Right. That's just ignore it, and it won't be there. Yeah.
Yeah. What mustache?
So the way the show always works is that, especially when we bring on a guest, we ask our guest first. So, Beau, what's top of mind for you?
Good question, Rachel. I'd really kind of like to talk about, this. I just started at a company called Code. We're a solutions partner. And I left the end user life to come to I always describe it as the dark side. And a lot of other folks kind of describe the partner life as the dark side. And when they say it, I say it's great over here. We've got cookies, and they're usually warm baked. So I kind of want to talk about that first.
The cookies?
Yes.
The dark side. It's interesting that you refer to it as the dark side. I think like when I made the transition from the partner network to the Microsoft side, I referred to it as the dark side. But maybe we just call it the blue side.
I think it's like the mothership. That's what I feel. It's like you get sucked up by the mothership. But I feel like calling the partner channel the dark side is like it shows the perspective, I think, a lot of times that kind of gets popularized. So like, because your partner makes money off of you as an end user, there's got to be there. I don't know. It's that weird extra flavor of like they're profiting off of what they're working, even though every single person who works for an end user is being paid also to be there. But it's that like historical concept of partners making reasons to make profit off of you versus being like a true, we're here to do the work that you want done and be transparent and like make sure we're also managing your budget so we're not irresponsibly using it, right?
Yeah. So for me, when I got into the ERP like arena, if you will, many moons ago, I fell in love with ERP because I got to influence, or I got to affect people's lives for the positive. And I'm choosing to only call out the positive effects of implementing good code. And I certainly had no negative check-ins on people's lives, especially not to prod. But seeing that impact on people's lives, whether it be like hey, every single day for 60 times an hour, I have to click this button. Well, what if you didn't have to click that button and it was automated? And, that kind of expands to bigger automations, or, we're going to simplify this process and workflow from you with no code, but just, using like a Kaizen event and fixing their workflow.
Yeah.
To me, that's when I really started to love ERP work. And to me, I really like going to the partner side because I get to do that a lot. And the difference for me coming from the end user side to the partner side is typically partners get to be assigned the really complicated stuff. And I love puzzles. I loved solving complicated stuff. And typically you get to work with a lot of people that like to do that same kind of thing. So
Yeah.
It's not only I get my cup filled with solving complicated problems, but I also get to work with a lot of like-minded individuals that their cup gets filled by that. So yeah, call it the dark side. I think I typically like to lean in on dad jokes to lighten the mood on conversations. So
I love your dad jokes. I also love Taylor Tip Tuesdays. They always make my Tuesday mornings like so bright. But I have a very serious question that I think is probably top of mind for anybody who might be watching this.
Okay.
What exactly is CAF to code? Like, is this like an acronym for something, or is it like an abbreviation? Like, is this like
100%.
some made up word? I've just been wondering.
Okay, so let's just call it out. Thanks. These were the hard-hitting questions that you warned me about. So CAF to code is short for caffeine to code. Our founder, Ben, he kind of started it, quote unquote, in his basement, if you will. And realistically, during the pandemic, he was working on some contract work, quite literally moonlighting, turning caffeine into code. And he kind of had this bright idea: hey, what if I turn this into a company? And that's when it really kind of kicked off from there. He started getting more and more contracts to go from something that was really unsustainable for one individual, and started growing that and helping out his friends and helping out some other like-minded individuals. So that started way back in the day as kind of just a cheeky comment on turning caffeine into code.
Super cool. So Ratchet is actually listening live, and he commented in the chat. He said F&O is always a bright side wherever it is. I love that.
Nice.
So, I
100% agree.
Yeah.
I love that. Thanks, Ratchet. So, Anne, do you have a burning question for Beau? Go ahead.
Yes,
I do. Speaking as a former fast track solution architect and being joined by my partner in crime, Rachel, who I think still kind of sort of qualifies as a fast track solution architect, as a chief operating officer of one of our implementers, have you read the fast track implementation guide page cover to cover?
Cover to cover? Not cover to cover, no. But there, we do have
you maybe read all of it like at different points?
I mean, yeah, you're essentially reading it like moments before meeting with the fast track team. So it's like oh shoot, what are we about to like cover right now? Oh yes, I should become an expert right quick on this. The thing that I love about fast track, and I think maybe Ratchet also kind of agrees here, but to me, like fast track has always been like intuitive, and to me it's always been like really common sense implementing. So and Rachel, you can attest to this, because my last end user was with you as the fast track architect. So all of our reviews with you were typically peachy keen, because it was like, hey, are you doing this? Yes, we're doing that and this. And hey, are you doing this? Yes, of course. We've got that scheduled for here. Here's our documentation. And to me, like it really feeds into a successful go live, a successful implementation, where typically executives really like to hear about like on time and under budget, but really following like the fast track kind of methodology and that journey enables that. It's less about, you know, leaning into other principles and other like tips and tricks, and more of like, hey, this is like a tried and true methodology. We should be following that. Didn't really answer your question, Anne, other than, but yeah.
That's okay. No, so, I also haven't read it cover to cover, so I don't really have a leg to stand on here. I just thought it'd be fun to grill you a little bit.
Thank
so
God.
I want to ask you, you know, now based on what we just talked about, like knowing that you're new to CAFTA Code, like what do you see as like your biggest challenge, right? Coming into this new role at a partner, you know, in the Dynamics 365 space. And maybe bonus question, like, is there anything that Microsoft can do to help you along the way, or things that you're looking, you know, for that advice on that we can help you with?
So a ton of things come to mind. So CAFTA Code today is doing a really successful job at meeting our customers' needs. But as I kind of alluded to it today, we've got, you know, a number of employees that are experts and have their own individual kind of experiences. Our new challenge for 2025 is to kind of standardize on our delivery and standardize on our implementation, which goes hand in hand to our your second question. So I would really love to partner with Microsoft and, you know, start standardizing those kind of things with you guys. So we have standards in Fast Track. I would love to have our standards align with Microsoft across the board. Like what do typical FDDs look like? What do TDDs look like? And then just go across all of these different, you know, templates that we like to pick on every single day, or like testing strategies, training strategies, your business processes. How do where do all of those play in, and how do we get, you know, proper standardization as like kind of a foundation, and then how do we translate that foundation into, you know, we build on that.
I'm so glad that you kind of said that, because I'm going to put a link in the chat here. Since you didn't read the implementation guide cover to cover, you may not be aware, Beau, that we actually have some guidance specifically on that FTD and TDD. So it's a great article. You can check it out. Everyone can check it out. Should have read that implementation guide cover to cover. But it's great. It's great feedback. I think great. And there's definitely more that we can do. And, you know, I think great. Our viewpoint on the FDD TDD is we actually recommend that you don't make them two separate documents, that you keep them together, because when they're two separate documents, we tend to kind of have things that become disconnected, right? And we lose like those connection points. So the template that we provide is a combined FDD TDD template.
So I've done both. I've done like an FDD TDD as separate documents, and then them all together. Can I just get my raw like thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Like,
that's what we do here on Top of Mind.
Great. So when they're all together, to me, in my personal experience, that works really well from like a holistic document perspective. It starts to fall apart when you have a scenario like you're working at a partner and you're delivering the FDD portion before, you know, before going down that rabbit hole of, you know, completing the TDD portion. So that's a lot of work for a tech arc to complete for some like the functional design not to be approved. So in my experience on like the partner side is we deliver an FDD with like the bottom half that's a TDD, And we always have to give this disclaimer, like, please ignore that the fact that these are all blank. Like, we're going to fill that in as soon as you sign off on the functional design. So to me, that's kind of like been my experience. Like, yes, it's a great holistic document, but also if you want to try to avoid that conversation every time, you kind of just separate them. So, but then there's cons, exactly like you talked about.
Yeah.
You separate the documents, then you have 2 living documents that you have to constantly update. So it becomes even more of a headache.
Well, I think that's where it's like the versions, right? You can say, here's a V1 is primarily FDD, which is what are we going to do, right? What is the requirements for what we're building? And then there's an approval step, and V2 is adding a section that says, okay, how did we do it, or how are we going to do it? Not just like what are we building, but how. So it's like combining, I think, updating the same document with steps, in between, versus like having to do it all up front and then potentially put some investment in for something that's not even going to get approved beyond, the initial estimate.
That's a really cool alternative. I've never used versions like what our current template for FDD and TDD have versions, but I have never seen it used like that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I think, like, I've worked at a couple of smaller partners, right? And we preach this kind of like process and standardization in the transformation we do for customers in ERP. And a lot of times we don't look at ourselves in that same way. And it's like, okay, like, what are the deliverables we produce and what is the process we do that in? And I actually think that makes it easier for customers, like, as well. If you say, okay, so here's the not only the methodology and the different phases we go through to implement, but here are the deliverables we produce at each stage and the process for each deliverable to go from start to finish, and the gates for how to get there. Like, I think, and I mean, I've been accused a time or two of over engineering a process, but I also have found that when you communicate a clear process up front, you have a lot more understanding as you go in terms of where are we at, why are things maybe falling apart, or where do we need to recorrect. And like, when you don't have that explicit standard, you have different people doing it different ways and to different levels of detail or to different qualities. And like, so I'm a big fan of just kind of saying, this is our approach to stuff. And I think actually internally at Microsoft, like the fast track team has done a really great job of building, SharePoint pages that talk about each of the areas that they work on. And like, if you're new, here's where you go learn about stuff. Like, I think that sort of internal documentation and tooling helps you be more successful, like, outwardly as well.
Well, you also get more buy-in, right? When you are able to clearly articulate how a project is going to run and with these deliverables, the audience is immediately more bought in when they can take it and digest it, rather than like oh man, they just talked for 45 minutes on how this project's going to go. Can't wait for the summary recap by Copilot because I have no idea what they said. So that's something that it's top of mind for sure, pun intended.
Yeah. I love Ratchet's comment about the business process catalog because I was thinking about that as well. So I
didn't pay him to say that. Those are his own words.
Right. We're going to have to talk about it at some point. And it's not just that definition of business processes, but it's the ADO template, the Azure DevOps template that comes with that. And I think that, like, I don't know, Rachel, if you got updates on this, but how I've heard some partners are starting to like use that template as their backbone of using Azure DevOps to drive implementations. And I also would love, Beau, your ideas about like how do you connect things like FDDs and TDDs into Azure DevOps, and like, how do you see that connection between the kind of more technical structure and all of the work that goes on kind of outside of DevOps? Like, where do you see the balance of getting it in there for visibility versus leaving people flexibility to get their work done? So Rachel, for you.
Yeah. So Tuesday this week, we published the latest version of the catalog, in case everyone didn't know, aka.ms/business process catalog. Due to some technical challenges, it's not on the download center. It is in the GitHub repository, but that aka link still works. And we updated the documentation to point to that. But I think to your point, Anne, like the Azure DevOps template that we've created, we want that to be that starting point, that framework, and for partners to extend it. We've been working very closely with a number of partners who have 100% fully uptaken this, and then they've extended and built on top of it the industry, the IP that they bring in, on top of the catalog. And I think, the main behavior that we're trying to drive with what we're building and what we're doing is that we want the customers and the partners to be thinking about the business process first, right? What's the problem I'm trying to solve? Which business processes is this? And then all the work that we're doing, all the configuration, all the data migrations, all the integrations should map in to at least those level 3 processes, but preferably the level 4 scenarios in that catalog. We're working towards test automation and data migrations in the catalog out of the box. So lots of cool, exciting features coming in the future. But I think there's a lot there for partners to use as a starting point and a framework to build off of. We're not trying to enforce a specific methodology. We're trying to provide a framework to help make that process go faster for everyone.
I don't have anything to add on to what Rachel just said, but it's and to your question, like to me, I see where I see an TDD or an FTD translate into ADO. I kind of describe that as like the high level version of the work versus like the execution of the work. Mm-hmm. And we like our FTD has listed out all of the test cases. So those actually go 1-to-1 into ADO. But to me, I think it kind of depends. And this is just, I'll put my consultant hat here on a little bit and say the word it depends. But realistically, how your project methodology is set up for your specific implementation will change the way that you translate a TDD or an FTD into ADO. So like if you're realistic, like where are you putting an enhancement? Are you putting it as a feature? Are you putting it as an epic? Like that really does depend on the size of your implementation and how you've kind of organized all of these enhancements or gaps. And if your implementation is at a smaller company, maybe that's less important. And if you anticipate like hundreds of enhancements, then it becomes very important. And you have to be intentional with your organization, or a ball will inevitably get dropped. So I've been fortunate to work on both, and I typically like to do the same thing for small all the way to large, and it's worked out for me in the past.
Yeah. Did we answer all the questions you had, Anne?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've been out of the implementation side for a while, but I think it all makes a lot of sense. I think that I agree. Like I've seen a lot of different projects that have different needs to, do it slightly differently. And that's where having a standard but flexible methodology, especially, I think really is like the key. I don't know if this I don't think this is a controversial opinion at all, but I'd love to hear your takes. Like, where do you guys stand on process mapping, like Visio diagrams? as is process, to be process? Do you guys like both? Do you like just to be? Because I feel like it's not the standard anymore for everybody, that like it's not built into every SOW that I've heard of, right? So like, what's your take on the place for process maps?
First off, let's breeze over the fact that you called an SOW SOW, and we'll move on from that.
Is that not what people call that?
Today I learned how to pronounce it. Yeah.
Has anybody?
Yes. I mean, I think
just say the 3 letters like SOW.
SOW SOW.
I mean, I've heard both, but I guess like I've heard SOW a lot.
There's a lot
like,
more syllables
like one person
in SOW than there are in SOW.
Yeah.
Are we really trying to shorten it? Like, we have like our lives are too busy?
We do work for Microsoft. It's literally in our job requirements.
Yeah, we have an acronym for everything.
It'll be in your performance review shortened.
Fast Track Recognized Solution Architects FERSA.
Yeah,
FERSA.
Thank God for that one though, because like saying all those letters in a row, I never really mess up the middle. It's like I know it has an F and an A. Yeah.
Anyway, back to process mapping.
So for Visio diagrams for current state and to be state, I'm a huge fan. So to me, I've been part of like FDD reviews that I'm presenting, and I'll show a to be state, and the stakeholders that are in the room, the ones that haven't contributed to the FDD, I should make that disclaimer, are usually leave with like, I had no idea this was the current process. And it's like, okay, that's an alarm, but we're going to move on from that. But they're seeing current process almost aligns the entire room before we're trying to get into solution mode. And I like to start out almost all my meetings like that. Exactly, not with a Visio diagram, but like hey, here's how I'm understanding this current issue. Here's how I'm understanding this. Today, we're going to achieve a solution for that. And then if we spend 15 minutes like aligning with what the problem is, that is almost 80% of the problem is defining it and aligning what the definition of the problem is. So to me, a Visio diagram of like pre and post state is like mandatory, but we have strayed away from that.
So I will second your motion. I'm a big fan. I would encourage it. I think there's maybe 2 things that I would add to what you said, Beau. The first one is that I think having your like where we were and like where we're going versions really helps visualize what's required for your change management. And I think that is one of those things that's missing in a lot of projects that leads to really poor adoption. The second reason is we are literally in the age of AI right now, and everybody's like, co-pilots, agents, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, and we're just like making co-pilots, but I think like sometimes we're not stopping to really think about like what is the process and how are we actually going to get value out of this co-pilot or this agent or this AI capability. And I think it's super, super critical that before you ever build any co-pilot or agent or AI capability, you really need to understand the process, because you cannot automate a process you do not understand. You cannot.
That's actually, it's really funny because to pull the curtain back on like the product team a little bit, as they went about building, like deciding where to build the first agents and what agents to build, they did exactly that. They said, what are the like end-to-end, they looked at the end-to-end processes. They actually, I don't know, I assume you know this, Rachel, but they used the process catalog to do this.
Yeah.
They looked at the end-to-end processes and like what people are doing underneath. They sat with customers and said, okay, like which areas of these processes are the most annoying for you? And then they said, okay, what does it look like for you? What do you do? And what are all the steps? And then they said, okay, how like there's this slide we have internally. It's really nice. Like, here's like an example from a customer. the steps that they go through for this process today and all the different systems they have to work in. And then on this other side, here is what it looks like when you have an agent doing it. And like that is the most popular like slide. And I will say, I think that the agents have come, like the ideas have been really successful. Obviously, we're still waiting for them to come to public preview for people to try out. But
yeah,
like when like they're taking that approach in designing our first party agents, I think we should all be, as we build our own agents on, you know, Copilot Studio or whatever, should be thinking that same exact way. Like, what does that process look like? How is this agent going to make it better? And do I need an agent for it or not?
And
right.
underscore, do you need Copilot to really solve this problem? Like, just because it's AI, like does not mean we need to solve every problem with AI. Yeah.
So one more pitfall that I want to call out, like when you're doing like as is and to be, is that, and I think, and this is maybe why people have moved away from it. I think a lot of people struggle with understanding the difference between a business process and a system process.
100%. Yeah.
Right. And so it's like separating that. And I think it's even been challenging for us. And it's why we've kind of gone through so many changes to the catalog in the last couple of releases. But I think we've really landed well. And we're very close, I think, to being done with like major rework. But it's like understanding the difference between like, this is the business process, like the steps that logically need to happen, and the system steps that I do. Because I think when we design system processes and like assume that that's the business process, like
it is not.
It's not. They're two separate things. And so like I can't emphasize that one enough.
Yeah, it's the difference between creating a customer record and onboarding a new customer account. Like,
yes,
right.
That's such a good example. So I'll give credit where credit's due. Our CAF decoders, or our employees, do an amazing job at this. So like when we're talking to our clients or customers, a lot of times when we're talking to the folks that are like in the weeds and doing the work, they cannot separate like doing my job versus using the system. Like they describe their job like second nature. I go to the ERP, I click this button, I do this thing. Some of them know why they're doing this thing. Most of them don't. So like our functional consultants and solution architects, they're really good at translating that, and they're very good at like, okay, I heard you, saw you, I can create two separate documents, and it's a little bit of talent and a lot of skill, and it's like it's something that we put a lot of intentionality on our interviews to make sure that we're hiring the right people that can do that.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those areas where like I'd love to see, as the business process catalog and like the framework, this approach we're taking, which hopefully for people who are watching, you guys already know, but we're pulling it into our pre-sales enablement as well, because ideally we'd like you to be selling with a process-centric mindset, and then carrying that over as a continuous motion into delivering with process-centric, and then optimizing post-go live again with a process-centric view. But I think like that training of how to approach things with a business process mindset, and I think there's some of it in some of the solution architect like learn stuff now, but I think there's even more that we can do. And so like recently I've been mentoring with Tech Fluent again this year, and my mentee and I had a really fun chat. I taught her how to do a business process diagram because she'd never done one before. And then we talked about like the business analyst role, instead of calling it, a functional consultant, thinking about like, okay, a business analyst can work for an end user or it can work for a partner, but what is really required to do that job versus like what are things you can learn. Like I can learn how a system works. I can learn, what are retail like industry nuances, but the skill of being able to translate one thing to another, that skill of being able to understand what somebody else is doing and saying without putting your own like assumptions on top of them, right? Asking open-ended questions and taking good notes even, or just like how do you respond back with, okay, well, this is what I think you said. Can you confirm that to me, right? Like all those, it's just like it is really about the framing, the questions asking, and your translating skills more so than it is about knowing how every single field in a product can be configured.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because there is a literal certification you can get in business analyst work. So it is a 6-letter acronym. I do not know, and I wouldn't know how to pronounce it as one word. Syllable. Yeah, as a word. It's absolutely a skill. What do you think, Rachel? Is it more skill than talent, or is there like naturally talented analysts out there?
I think there are. I think it can be a natural skill or come more naturally to some people, but I do think like it's definitely super important. Like I think a big part of the work that I'm trying to do is to shift us away, and we've been doing it for 20 plus years, is like shift away from like teaching people to be system configurators and teaching them to be good business analysts. And I do think like problem solving, it takes some experience, and right, you do have to have some understanding of the software to be able to do that, but you also have to have understanding of the business and know how to ask the right questions. But I do think it is something that could be taught to people.
I agree. I think it's something you can absolutely teach. And the reason why I think that is because when I was on the end user side, I would teach that to our devs. So I think having those kind of skills as a developer only makes you a better developer. And then as you're kind of growing up in your life to be a tech arc, if that's where you wanted to grow up to be, those are required skills at that level. So getting that kind of like practice, and you have that 10,000 hours before you're required to ask those questions. Crucial.
Yeah.
Well, we usually try to keep these to 30 minutes, and we've now bantered for 37 minutes. Time flies when you're having fun. Any final closing words or thoughts, Beau?
I'll just keep it short because we're -7 minutes into this now, or over. Yes, I just went like triple negative there. Yep. So I just want to thank you guys for inviting me to this. This was fun. I would love to be part of this another time if you guys will have me. But I'm looking forward to watching some future episodes as well.
Sounds like we need to get this show back on the road, Rachel.
Maybe we can figure out how to make Friday afternoons work.
Yeah, I think we used to have a standing calendar invite where we would just like always, and we tried to time it so we could hit the Europeans and the Americans, because we have so many like community members in both time zones during like a live. And then I moved from Atlanta to Seattle and changed jobs and messed up our whole series. So I think
Anne's fault.
It is my fault. I think it's a little bit my fault. But I feel like we could probably make Friday afternoons work, and just tell our friends over in other time zones to catch us on the recordings on Monday morning and have a nice start to your week while we end ours.
And maybe we can get Bobby to like include us in his In Case You Missed It series. We need to have Bobby on. Bobby Small.
We should have Bobby on. Anyway, of course we'd have you again, Beau. Thank you so much for joining us. It was nice to resurrect the series and talk shop a little bit more and share it with all of our like 3 people listening in live right now. But
it's what happens when you schedule the meeting 15 minutes before you're going live. But we do have a few dedicated fans. Thank you everyone for joining us on this special edition of Top of Mind with Anne and Rachel. And thank you, Beau, for joining us and all of your wonderful insights today. And we hope to see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.